partnership, as we said, the 5 partners, ESA, JAXA, Canada, NASA and Roscosmos. And actually the partnership is a lot stronger than just the ISS. It's also clear that the partnership will continue beyond. So what we're discussing now, the gateway and everything that we're doing for Forward to the Moon, we do with the same partnership. So the partnership will for sure outlast along the ISS program.
So absolutely, the Russian Soyuz and the American shuttle have been the workhorse of the human spaceflight for the last few decades. Very reliable, robust spacecraft that served us well. But we're moving to a new era today. NASA has contracted with a couple of commercial space companies, SpaceX and also with Boeing, to develop crew vehicles that will be able to take care of transport to low Earth orbit, including the International Space Station in the years to come. And NASA is also developing their own vehicle called the Orion. The SpaceX Dragon 2 crew vehicle, for example, will be able to hold up to 7 people, I believe. It's had an unmanned test already, a successful one to the International Space Station earlier this year in March. We're hoping that final certification of the 2 vehicles will happen a little bit later this year, and perhaps the first human space flights to the station this year or next.
This is rendezvous of shuttle and ISS. Now Soyuz rendezvous to ISS is going approximately 3 hours and 30 minutes, but 10 years ago it took 2 days for us.
So also there the technology is advancing a lot. Here you see the crew arriving. We were the first 6-person crew on orbit. With the commercial vehicles, as Bob just explained, we will go to 7-person crew, which will actually mean a double of the utilization time. So for all the scientists here, we will have a lot more time to do science on board of the space station. The next one is also for me, sorry, I need to look at my paper. So the EVA. EVA is very important, of course. We learn how to work and operate in space. By the way, our colleague Luca Parmitano will do the most complex EVAs ever planned in the human spaceflight history of the AMS payload. It's the Alpha Magnetic Spectrometer that will be repaired at the end of the year. It's really, if you would see this payload and you have to repair it in a lab, it would be an extremely difficult operation. And Luca and his crew members, they have been specially trained for that. They will have to do these operations outside of the space station. So it will be extremely complex, but it's also an extremely valuable payload because with this payload we are really rewriting fundamental physics, especially about black matter. And here you see the crew coming back in after the EVA.
Another indispensable element of human spaceflight has been the robotics. Robots have explored space on their own, but also they commendably worked out hand in hand with astronauts in space as well. The Canadarm2, the Dexter, the Japanese robot arm have built the space station. All the truss work, all the modules, all the solar arrays have been put in place by robotics, and they've supported astronauts during EVA as well. So they've been indispensable. But the next step in space is deep space. The Lunar Gateway, an asteroid visit, a mission to Mars, and the robots that we'll be developing have to be even more independent. We're starting to get practice on the ISS, allowing more automated, more control from the ground, from space. One of the tasks that we still do need humans for is a grapple of a free flyer, such as Nicole Frank and I were doing here. But even that is currently work to be done in an automated phase in years to come. And the reason for that is because of the distance that we're talking. From Mars to Earth is like a 20-minute speed of light distance. So you cannot be manually controlling a robot from Earth. Secondly, some of these platforms, such as the Lunar Gateway, are not going to be inhabited all the time. We need robots to operate in an automated fashion using AI.
We have 3 types of the payload vehicles which bring us supplies, oxygen, water, and experiments. And now relying a lot on commercial vehicles.
Yeah, so we have already 2 commercial vehicles, SpaceX and Cygnus. A third one will be added to that. Is from Sierra Nevada, which is kindly a winged vehicle, which will also allow us to bring samples back in lower gravity conditions. And these are of course now procured in a different way. This is a big step that has been from the space station. It's not NASA anymore operating the vehicles or doing the flights, but it's commercially procured services. So we pay when the payloads get on orbit. It's a little bit like a DHL. You don't pay for the airplane, what you pay is for your package to be delivered. And this is what we are going to do more and more. And here we also have some Russian vehicles arriving. I think this was the progress, Roman.
Yeah, we're still waiting for the new one, module, Russian module, which will increase capabilities for Russian science next year.
Yeah, that's the MLM module, and we are also looking if we can cooperate with our Russian colleagues to do even more science and to get more real estate. One of the limiting factors that we have today in our Columbus module is the amount of volume that we have available to do science. And together with my colleague Andrea Schön, who is here in the room as well, you can ask questions to him later. We are looking to augment the number of science that we can do.
One of the best things about the International Space Station is that it's allowed us to do research in a weightless environment. There is no other facility in the world or off the world that allows us to do weightlessness research. So we're doing research in the area of animal biology, plant biology, human physiology, materials processing, fluid physics, combustion science, medical demonstrations that cannot be done anywhere else on Earth. And yeah, we're certainly going to go to deep space soon. We've got to learn how humans can live in deep space, but science will continue on the space station at least for another 5 years. And we'll always need to have a resource in low Earth orbit and elsewhere on the surface of the moon and in deep space for doing science, to meet the needs of our science community. Not only are we learning about some of the fundamental properties of how the human body changes in space, but we're also bringing spin-offs to Earth as well. Some of the research that we took part in is involved in materials processing, protein crystallization, which is providing potential cures for some nasty diseases out there, such as Duchenne muscular dystrophy, and how we can diagnose pleural effusions using ultrasound, techniques developed on the space station.
Yeah, so and this will continue to be very important, but we want to augment, as we said, the science capability of our Columbus module. That's why also in the new program proposal that we are making by the end to the ministers by the end of the year, we will try to modernize our Columbus module with a lot more capabilities for upload, download, a lot more scientists that can have direct interaction with their payloads on board of the space station. So this will be a big part of the next 10 years of Columbus operations. Is this whole modernization effort that we are doing. You see here Nicole working with some material science, and here this is in the Russian segment, growing salad also for the future, Roman.
Not very tasty. But anyway, this is a result of our science.
And you see here a little bit later, you will see Roman operating the Melfi payload, which of course is important because the astronauts are not the scientists, of course. The scientists sit here in the room. What we are doing is we are doing execution of science, and then we bring the samples back to the ground, and a lot of them are frozen here in this magnificent facility, minus 80 degrees Melfi. It has been operated on the space station now for more than 10 years, and the Brighton engine that is doing this cooling has not failed once in 10 years. It's really an amazing piece of European technology. So this was the treadmill that we installed on orbit. Physical exercise is very important, although I hate to do sports. My colleagues here can acknowledge that. But on orbit, of course, I did all my exercise because it's really important for your body to stay fit.
Now we hate it too.
So space motion sickness, muscular atrophy, bone demineralization are some of the human physiological changes that occur in short, relatively short duration space flights in low Earth orbit, but we're going to deep space soon. These are missions that could last up to 2.5 years long. So we're going to see new problems, visual problems that will occur, increased levels of ionizing radiation exposure to partial gravity, not isolation and confinement, but extreme isolation and confinement, and then healthcare and delivery. So we're going to have to come up with new methods of figuring out how the human body changes during long duration spaceflight, and we'll continue to push the limits there.
So here we do a tour of the ISS with the current modules. This is the JAM module, our Japanese module. Here, our famous Columbus module, one of the most used scientific labs on board of the space station, very much integrated. But also here we will move to a new era. We will have new partnerships. We are working, for example, with the UAE already, because they have also set up a human spaceflight program, and their first astronaut will fly in September, and ESA is actually working with them. He will do also ESA science for us, the UAE astronaut, and so they will certainly augment the capabilities in the station. But we are also looking at commercial partnerships. NASA has just announced their commercial policy for the ISS. They have opened a port so that we could have in the future commercial modules. Bernard Hoefenbach is here from ESA. He's responsible for our commercialization policy. So also if you have ideas or interest to see how through a different approach, a commercialized approach, we could do things on orbit. I see the people from SAS with IceCubes, which was the first, I would say, ESA commercial payload or facility that we've flown to the ISS. Of course, we're happy to discuss with you and to entertain any possibilities that there are in the future.
Each day we make more than 10 or approximately 10,000 pictures of the Earth, because we need to understand how we change our climate during our flight, and each day we see that climate is changing, and we use different equipment, special lenses and different frequencies for that to understand and to show how we have to take care about our planet.
So indeed, if you see from orbit the very thin layer of the atmosphere, that's certainly something that strikes every astronaut, I think. So of course, space is not going to solve climate change, but for sure, through all the space activities that we're doing also in ESA with our Copernicus program, but also through all the Earth observation that we do from the ISS, we can better understand the problem. And if you want to solve a problem, the scientists here in the room very surely know that if you want to solve a problem, you first need to understand it. And that's why we do science, and that's why we invest into this, of course. And you see also some very nice pictures. This was Dubai, of course, the Palm Island, artificially made, and here a very nice picture of a European island, not artificially made, but still there, Venice with the Grand Canal.
The most expensive
Haircuts.
haircuts, yeah.
So you can see that we're not all very happy with our haircutter, and here you see Nicole that also wanted to be part of the crew and have some haircut. Same as Jeff, he doesn't have any hair, but still everybody wants to be part of the crew, of course.
Every daily routine that we take for granted here on Earth, cutting your hair, brushing your teeth, taking a shower or washing up, taking a drink, it's different in space. Using the toilet here is a 5-minute task. Here in space, it's 20-30 minutes to get it done cleanly. And sometimes it works in space, sometimes it doesn't. We make jokes about life in low Earth orbit, but it will be an order of magnitude more challenging for deep space.
Especially if you see the amount of food or the variety in food and all the logistics that we can have when we fly around low Earth orbit. For sure this will not happen when we fly to deep space. The module that we are talking about, this mini module, when the astronauts will have to stay there for several weeks, it will be a total different hardship than what we have today. This was an important moment. It was the moment that I took over the commandership of the International Space Station. Of course, we could only do that because Europe has invested a lot into their capabilities since we started with human spaceflight in Europe, of course, after the Americans and the Russians. But we have now our own control centers, we had our own transport vehicles, ATV. We will now be part of the transport to the moon with our MPCV and ESM. So if in the future astronauts will fly to the moon, they will do this thanks to European technology. So I think it's very important to understand that. And of course, I'm very happy to say that in the meantime we had Alexander Gerst from Germany, who was the commander of the space station, and now Luca Parmitano, that will launch on the 20th of July, the date of the lunar landing, will also be a commander of the ISS. So we are very happy that Europe can continue to play an important role, not only in terms of technology and science, but also in operations with our control centers and with our astronauts.
Undocking and the rendezvous and landing, after that takes about 2.5 hours, and people special team waiting for us there in the back. Kazakhstan, yes. And this is amazing time.
It's an amazing time. You are, of course, a little bit sad if you have to leave this infrastructure behind, and especially in my case, coming from a small member state, realizing that it was probably the last time that you could fly to the International Space Station. But at the same time, of course, it's a very happy time because you come back to real life on Earth. Your family, your kids, your friends are of course all here. So
Ground food.
the real food is here. Roman. So this is the last picture of our crew, 188 days together in space, smiling. 10 years later, and we're still smiling together. So I think that means something.
Now, 188 days is a long period of time from one respect, to over that period of time. We missed our friends, we missed our family, we missed nature, so it was good to go home. On the other hand, 188 days is not long. I think all of us still found that our adaptation to space was increasing, our productivity, our efficiency was increasing. But I think back, now that I'm on Earth again, every day, I think back on the millions of memories that I have of my time aboard the space station in space. I have a lot of memories. I have solid friendships with the people that I flew with, support people on the ground, with great organizations, the opportunity to work with the European Space Agency, its member nations, NASA, Russia. It's, no one can aspire to have a more fulfilling career. And yeah, Frank is absolutely right. We are probably the closest of friends now. We've trained for 2.5 years prior to launch. We worked in space for 6 months together, and then there's just some kind of a bond that develops with crewmates. It's kind of special. So any opportunity I have to be with Roman and Frank, and then the other handful of people that we flew with is something that I cherish and I long for. Thank you.
So, yeah.
Also, in addition, I have to say that yes, of course, looking back 10 years ago and understand that the space, the orbit, the ISS is a good example of friendship and cooperation between people all over the world.
So with these final words, I would like to thank you for being here today, for celebrating together with us this 10 years anniversary. But again, we look a little bit back on the past. For us, it's very enjoyable moments. But the end, it's of course all about the future. And the rest of the day, I think, and certainly this afternoon, we will talk a lot about the future, and we will hope that you build that future together with us. Thank you very much.